No matter what, people will commit to misunderstanding you. What's most important is your commitment to understanding yourself. Hello, you guys. My name is Nkira Kumadani, known as NK, and welcome back to Misunderstood. You went on a trip with a man. I thought it was a perfect time to do a throwback to a trip I took exactly a year ago. And funny enough, the man in question just texted me. But before we get into all that, take some time right now to rate this podcast, Misunderstood, 5 stars. I'm really happy with the viewership as well as how many people resonate with this podcast. And I love bringing episodes every single week. To support this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating on Misunderstood on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you're listening. Thank you so much. So as I said, we went on a trip with a man, and I haven't been on a trip with a man in years, but last October, I took a trip with a man, and it is even more fitting because it was a fall-inspired trip. As we are in fall right now, I thought, let's go down memory lane and talk about this trip to not only tell you guys the specific inner workings about my time with this man, but also give you a fun fall trip debrief that hopefully inspires you to take a fall trip like this. We went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I had never been to Jackson Hole, Wyoming before this trip. I had heard really fun things about Jackson Hole in specific, and I also did know that Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks are in Wyoming. So I was very much excited to go for that reason. Now, you're probably more curious about the guy. I met this guy on Bumble in September of last year, and we hit it off very, very, very quickly. There was so much chemistry with this man. You can cut that shit with a knife. This man was 6'4", built like a hockey player, had a beard, was from Brazil, was so fucking hot. He was so hot. I tell my friends this. He is the exact archetype of the man that hopefully I end up with. Physically, he's everything that I want. Literally everything. So just keep that in mind as we progress this story. At the end of September, he asked me to go on this trip with him. He was only in New York for a specific amount of months, so he really wanted to see the national parks before he had to go back to Brazil. And if you ask me on a trip, I'm not gonna say no. I have always wanted to go to Jackson Hole. I didn't really know when I would go. As I've always mentioned, I do a lot of things solo, but I don't know if that would be a place that I would go solo. I'm really happy that I had the opportunity via being asked to go, and I took it. So now let's talk about the entire trip. Let's talk about every single thing that we did. I have my entire itinerary pulled up. Let's go. Our trip was October 19th through 22nd. Third week of October. I would say if you are planning to go to Jackson Hole, September is actually the best month for the fall-inspired energy. We were told that we picked the last good weekend for fall activities before a lot of Jackson Hole closes for the winter. So just keep that in mind. If you're planning to go to Jackson Hole and if you want specifically fall vibes, I highly recommend going in September, early October. So from New York City, we flew into the Jackson Hole airport, which is such a pretty airport also. It's tiny, but it's gorgeous. We picked up our rental car. Definitely recommend having a rental car because there really isn't any public transportation, and also because you are probably wanting to go to the national parks, you obviously need a car. We checked into our hotel, which was very, very close to the town square of Jackson Hole, and then we just started sightseeing. We went to Jackson Hole Town Square. We went to Billy's Burgers for a quick lunch. We went to Cowboy Coffee Co. We actually went there 3 separate times because I made him take me there 3 separate times because it was so good. Their matcha was amazing. I couldn't get enough. I just got the iced vanilla matcha, but they make their matcha so good. And something I really enjoyed about Jackson Hole overall is that everything looks so cute, so quaint, right out of a storybook. And everyone was also pretty nice. I was a little apprehensive because I know that Wyoming is a red state, but I was treated very nice, and I had no issues on that front. I really, really, really wanted to go horseback riding. So I went horseback riding at Spring Creek Ranch. I made him come with me, of course, but he didn't want to ride horses, which is fine. He took all the photos. So at least we had someone to take photos. They do hour sessions, and I believe it was $70, which I think that's a pretty reasonable price. I don't think that's a horrible price. I had so much fun. This ranch was gorgeous. It was huge. An hour felt like more than enough time to ride the horses, and my horse was so cute, and she was a perfect, well-behaved horse. And also, the instructor had a specific horse that apparently had to be in the front of the entire pack, and mine was at the front of the entire pack. So I was literally in the front of the entire group, right behind the instructor. So I had a pretty much unobstructed view of everything that we were seeing, which was really cool. That was such a core memory, and I honestly want to go back and do that exact activity again. Then we drove to Mormon Row, and Mormon Row is this gorgeous plot of land, and there's this little house in the middle of this gorgeous plot of land, and everyone goes there for sunset. So we saw the sunset, and it was one of the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen in my life. And I also remember it being a little cold that evening because, as I said, we were there right at the cutoff of when it gets pretty cold in Jackson Hole. So I had a scarf and I had a jacket, but I was still pretty cold. But the guy in question, he gave me his jacket, which honestly, that should be the standard. Okay, just being a gentleman is the standard. After that, we drove back to our hotel, changed, then went to dinner at Bubba's Barbecue. I love barbecue, fun fact about me, but I never get to eat it because I feel like barbecue is such a southern thing. I haven't found a really good spot in New York City at this time, but I was really excited because I know that Wyoming is very much known for their barbecue, and we got this meat platter of literally every single meat that you can think of: brisket, pork, chicken, ribs. I love ribs so much. So we indulged on our dinner, and then we went to the $1 Million Cowboy Bar, the staples of Jackson Hole. Everyone talks about this bar. It is right in the middle of town square. You can't miss it, and it is definitely worth going. There is a $10 cover charge. I don't know if it's always $10, but it was $10 when we went there. It was so much fun. I learned line dancing. There was a band playing. There were saddles as the bar seats, and the entire bar was just decked out so beautifully in Western decor. I wore my cowboy hat, of course, and I danced around with everybody. I had so much fun. The guy in question, he was nervous to dance, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go dance. You should come dance with me. But after many attempts, he really didn't want to dance. So he just stood right next to me while I was dancing and took photos and videos for me. They have really good beer there as well. There's beers in that bar that you can't get anywhere else in Wyoming. And then you also can't get it anywhere else in the country. So it was really cool to have that experience. Sunday, the next day, we woke up so early because we really wanted to do sunrise at Oxbow Bend. It was so beautiful. I actually shed a tear. It was so gorgeous. I'm literally getting chills thinking about it because I closed my eyes and I can remember seeing the sunrise at that beautiful place, seeing the mountains in the back, seeing all of the animals wake up. It was amazing, so I highly recommend. We got there at 7 a.m. and it was perfect, and there was barely anyone there as well. Then we decided to explore more of Grand Teton. The national parks are massive, by the way, so it is definitely recommended to break them up into multiple days. I was very adamant on getting the photo of the national park sign. So after that, we went to Schwabacher Landing. Then we went over to Snake River Overlook. All right, y'all. The information that no one else knows. Obviously, have to tell the pod. It's funny because this trip was literally a year ago and I just have not said this anywhere. Also, I do have the YouTube video of this trip up on my YouTube, posted it last October. So there are a little crumbs of said man. However, we were exploring all day and yeah, there was some sexual tension, of course. There always is, especially when you're with a guy that you think is literally so hot. There's always sexual tension. Am I right, ladies? We went to Cunningham Cabin, and it is like the name states. It is a cabin. It is a secluded, abandoned cabin in the middle of nowhere, and there was literally no one there also. So we hooked up in the cabin, and it was really fun. All right, and I would do it again. I would do it again. After that, we got lunch. I forgot where we got lunch. And then we went to Jackson Lake, Jenny River Overlook, the Chapel of Transfiguration, and Inspiration Point. Then we went to the hotel to go change, and I took a nap. One thing about me, especially when I'm changing time zones, I get so tired and I need a nap. Wyoming is 3 hours behind New York, so my body was all out of whack and I needed a afternoon nap. Once we woke up and got changed, we went back out to the town square. I always need a magnet every single place I go. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I have a magnet collection of a lot of the places I've been so far. So I made him come with me and find my magnet. For dinner, we went to Snake River Brewing. This is a brewery in Jackson Hole. They had a lot of really cool beers to try. I did a little impromptu tasting. Monday, the next day, we started our day at Persephone, which is a bakery, one of the most popular bakeries in Jackson Hole. I had heard about it a ton before we even went on the trip, and it did not disappoint. It was pretty pricey, but everything was so fresh, so good. I got a croissant breakfast sandwich, and their secret to it is they use this amazing fig strawberry jam, which was so good. I asked for 2 more rounds of it. I think he got an avocado toast and a black coffee, and then I obviously got a matcha, and their matcha was also very good. And then we also got some baked goods to have on the drive. We got a cinnamon bun and a chocolate chip cookie, and they were both so good. And it's such a small bakery, but has a lot of character. It's so cute, and I highly recommend going there. Then we started our journey to Yellowstone. Yellowstone is massive. It's way bigger than Grand Teton, so we knew that we needed to break it up into 2 separate days. So this day, we went to Grand Village, and then we went over to Old Faithful, which has been a bucket list item forever. I've heard about it since I was a kid. So to be right there seeing the geyser erupt was such a core memory. We went to the upper, midway, and lower geyser basin and the Grand Prismic Spring, which was about a 30-minute walk to do all of that. I made sure to bring my sneakers to walk around, and it was really cool to see everything on foot. A memory that sticks out from that experience is my purse was oddly heavy, so I really didn't want to carry it. So he carried my purse throughout the entire walk. So just imagine a 6'4" hockey player with tattoos on his hands, carrying this little brown purse with a little cherry keychain on it. I thought it was just so funny. I was standing behind him and I was just giggling, and I obviously took a photo. I will never forget that. After that, we went to Harlequin Lake Trail, Madison River, Canyon Village, Artist Point. We did so much that day. Jackson Hole and Yellowstone are in the same state does not mean that they are close by any means. They are actually quite far away. I think it took 2.5 hours minimum to get from Jackson Hole to the start of Yellowstone. So we were out all day, and on our drive from Yellowstone back to Jackson Hole, it was already nighttime, and I told him I cannot drive at night. And obviously we took turns driving because that is a lot of driving for one person to drive all 4 days. So I said I will drive in the mornings because that's when I'm awake and I'm alert, and he can drive at night. So he drove in the evening. On our drive back to Jackson Hole, he was speeding a little bit and he got pulled over, and I was in the passenger seat a little terrified. He was kind of joking about it throughout the entire experience, which made me a little upset because as a Black woman, I just felt very uncomfortable with police interactions. I always have. I have had a quote situation with the police. This was so long ago. I was in college. But other than that, I just felt a little uncomfortable around that experience as it was happening. And I was expressing to him that I was upset and that it just felt like he wasn't taking it as seriously as I was. And he was saying, well, I'm from Brazil, so it shouldn't really matter. And I was like, well, you're in America and the rules still apply to you whether you are from here or not. Anyways, the cop came. We did the entire routine. He had him step out of the car. I was just sitting in the passenger seat, so quiet, showed the ID, looked at the license plate, all that, and he let us go with a warning. I started crying after we started driving again and just expressed my emotions because at first it didn't seem like he was understanding, but then he finally started to understand why I felt the way I did. And he did apologize and felt bad for putting me in that situation. That was nice to hear. Then we ended the night at Big Hole Barbecue for dinner. Now Tuesday, which was the last full day of us being there, we started the morning at Pearl Street Bagels, which is a breakfast spot. They had really good bagels. I got a matcha every single day and I was really happy about it. And the matcha there is so good. I don't know how they make it, but every matcha spot in Jackson Hole was amazing. Me and him got into the biggest argument. We had a blow up fight in the car after we got our bagels. I don't even know if I want to say why we got into a fight. I feel like that might be a little personal, especially because we aren't together anymore, but just know that the fight was so stupid, and the fight made me understand that as much as I'm so attracted to this guy, there's no way that this is even something that I should pursue after this trip. And also, I knew going into even meeting him that he was only going to be in New York for a 6-month stint. So I didn't want to fall further and further into feeling something for him when, outside of him leaving, the other component of why I knew it wasn't even a good idea to continue dating after the trip is there were a lot of core values that we did not align on, which leads me to reiterate something I said in a previous podcast episode where you can literally be the hottest guy ever and I can literally want to hook up with you every day. But if you don't embody certain values that are really important to me, i.e. my non-negotiables, then it's not going to work. No amount of hotness is going to change my mind. So after that blow-up fight, I was literally crying and we were silent in the car for like an hour. Like imagine just driving in silence. Okay, we were listening to music to soak up some of that silence, but it was just so uncomfortable. And once we finally got to our first stop, we parked the car. He apologized because he was in the wrong. And I also apologized for also adding flame to the fire. But it was then when we had the conversation of once we're back in New York, we need to leave this here and we need to just go our separate ways because of so many factors that aren't going to change in this situation. But anyways, continuing on with the itinerary, we started at Yellowstone Lake. Then we went to Hayden Valley, Lamar Valley, which was my favorite. Lamar Valley was so beautiful. It was so simple, so peaceful. There was nobody there and there were bison in the distance and I loved seeing them from afar and saying hi. There were also so many times throughout our drive where the bison would just come in the middle of the road and just stand there or walk by. And bison are huge. If you haven't seen a bison close up, I was 4 feet away from a bison. They are massive. They're quite literally just as big as the car. They seem like such peaceful creatures, so I really enjoyed every single time that we got to see one up close. But Lamar Valley specifically, we parked and I just ran down the hill and just had this really core memory happy dance throughout the fields of Lamar Valley by myself. He was all the way in the car and I just ran and had this fun moment for myself, which I'll never forget. We went to Trout Lake Trail. We went to Blacktail Drive. Then we went to Mammoth Hot Spring, which was a 30-minute trail. They had multiple trails, but we did the 30-minute one. But there's like a 30-minute trail, a 60-minute trail, and a 90-minute trail. Then we went to Obsidian Cliff, and there was a part of the cliff that we got to overlook the entire landscape. And we also got there right before sunset. So it was golden hour. It was so beautiful. So we were there taking photos. Then we made the long drive back to our hotel to change for our very last dinner in Jackson Hole. And I was very set on going to Gloria Trattoria, and it was so good. It's Italian food, and I loved my outfit that night. I wore this white dress with red cowboy boots and a matching red purse. I loved it. I looked so cute. And he was like, okay, this is your best look. And I was like, thank you so much. So we went to dinner and we had Italian food. We both got a glass of red wine and we reflected on our trip. And then we went back to the hotel and you know, this just goes back to being just a girl. I am just a girl and he is just a guy. And even though we are not compatible in a long-term relationship, we're insanely attracted to each other. And we're sharing a hotel room, and it is our last night on this trip. So regardless of everything, regardless of all the fights or the conflict or disagreements, the chemistry is insane. And one last hookup in our hotel. We fell asleep. We woke up super early because we forgot to pack, and we were off. We were off back to New York City. One thing as well I won't forget is in the airport as we were waiting for our connection flight. So we went from Jackson Hole to, I think, Denver, and we were in Denver for 3 hours before we got on our flight back to New York. That 3-hour stretch in the Denver airport, that's when I started to get sad. I started to get this bittersweet feeling. I knew that we can't be together and we shouldn't for very valid reasons, but just that bittersweet feeling of knowing that I'm really, really attracted to somebody, but for various reasons, it's not going to work out and it's not going to go the distance. That's just a little bittersweet. Yes, I know overall it wasn't meant to be for the long haul, but I am thankful for the stint of time that we shared together. I don't regret going on the trip at all. I got to go somewhere I've always wanted to go with literally one of the hottest guys I've ever dated. So yeah, I think that's a win. That's a win in my book. He offered to carry all my bags throughout the airport. So I felt like such a passenger princess, as I deserve. So overall, there were so many really good things about him and how he treated me. It was just a few bigger things that I couldn't overlook that ultimately ended up ending us. So now to present day. The fact that he reached out to me a year later, just saying, hey, how are you doing? I saw the message on WhatsApp because he's in Brazil, so obviously he has an international number. I saw the message and I thought, actually, this is important to the story. The night that we got back to New York, he brought all my suitcases into my apartment. We had dinner in my apartment and we hugged goodbye. And I remember crying. I cried as I was hugging him. It was really hard. I don't know. It was just hard. I have so much emotions. I'm such a lover girl, okay? Actually, he was kind of tearing up too. He's actually quite the softie. Even though optically he is literally the most masculine man ever, he's quite the softie. And that just added on to it being a lot more bittersweet because we both care about each other very deeply, and it was very obvious, but there were a lot of reasons why we needed to just end it. And it was honestly the most healthy decision. And I did tell him that night as well, I prefer if we don't speak. Just go no contact. It's better for my emotions and my mental health if we just end it here. And I remember him actually reaching out a month after that. So I ended up blocking him on text because he was still here for a few more months. So I ended up blocking him, which was hard, but I did it. And now, a year later, he reaches out to me on WhatsApp saying, how are you doing? I consulted my friends about this and they are aligned with me. They said it's probably best to just leave it in the past because you'll be reopening an old wound if you start up conversation with him, which is true. So we're just leaving it in the past, but he is a part of my past and he's a part of a story of my life that I don't regret. I will find a guy like him who fits the other qualities and the other values that I really deeply care about. If you've ever been on a trip with a guy who you're dating, it could get a little dicey. However, I'm always here for the story. I knew that no matter how him and I ended up, it was a great story and it was a great memory that I'll have forever, and I do not regret it. And honestly, I think I would do it all over again. And with that, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Misunderstood. Remember to rate this podcast 5 stars and follow it on Apple and Spotify. Join our Geneva group chat. It is always linked in the description of every single podcast episode. Hang out with me on my other socials, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest at NK Madani. And I will talk to you guys in my next one.